Hello, this is Rich Mogul, and welcome to the Securosis Firestarter. This should be going out on June 2nd, and I think when this goes live, I will be at Apple's WWDC, Worldwide Developer Conference keynote, which they let the media in for which I guess I count as media for that, for 1 hour for the keynote or 2 hours, whatever it is, and then they kick all of us out the door, and they only allow people who are registered developers to stay, which is pretty amusing. Anyway, nobody cares about that. Adrian Lane, you are my only co-host this week. What happened to Mike?
Mike is paying homage to the mouse. He's down in Disneyland or Disney World, and he's got the family and kids down there, and forgetting about all the sort of work that he promised to do. So I keep pinging him, and he keeps apologizing. But yeah, I think he's riding roller coasters and tweeting at the same time.
That's all right. Yeah, they do an annual trip down there. I know his daughter's got a big dance thing, and so it's pretty cool. My kid are very jealous, even though they were just there. They just kind of want to go like every weekend, and they haven't really figured it out. That doesn't work that way.
Why not?
So, yeah, well, yeah. you're no help. All right, so our topic this week is Sputnik. We may have hit a Sputnik moment, and that came from our internal little mailing list. I can't actually reveal which of our contributors kind of first threw out that term, but basically the idea behind it, for those of you that are not old enough to remember the impact or didn't learn, pay attention to history lessons of Sputnik. It was kind of like when Russia launched the Sputnik satellite, the U.S. kind of pooped their pants and realized that we were falling behind in not just the space race, but the corresponding military technologies. That's when our entire space program and everything kicked up. And so it was just kind of that one moment that changed everything. It was kind of the realization moment. And, I'm sure you can think of a lot of other sort of disastrous things that have had similar impact. So the question is target a Sputnik moment? CEO is gone.
The board of directors is under fire. The CISO is gone. Stock
They
prices
didn't have a
went down.
CISO. They had a CIO. That's why she's gone too.
Ah, point well taken. But all of those things considered, with the stock price, with the media, with them, I don't know if you've gone in. All of a sudden, all of the card swipe terminals have now been replaced, at least in the local Phoenix and Scottsdale Target. So they're clearly doing stuff. But is this actually a Sputnik moment in your mind?
I think the jury is out still, believe it or not. I think with all of the attention, now, first of all, we know the CEO, most of it wasn't the breach, actually. There were a lot of other missteps mostly, and we've talked about that before. They kind of moving into Canada and really flubbing that badly, as well as Target, it's a conservative organization. They're based out of, Minnesota, and, they've done a pretty poor job of maintaining their competitiveness as the kind of, shall we say, the economic strata of the U.S. has changed. But I think the jury is out despite all of this and a couple of other things we're going to bring up in a moment because, there's always quick reactions for a bit after a disaster. And the question to me, if it's a Sputnik moment, is how sustained is that going to be? I think very well, by the way, we could absolutely be in one. And we've got some other corresponding data points to bring up. But I don't think it's an absolute given that all of a sudden all CISOs are going to report to CEOs and be reporting to the board. Things could sort of settle down over time. I suspect that's not going to happen, but the odds, even if they're 80-20, that 20%, that's still a big number.
With Sarbanes-Oxley, it took board level and executive level recognition of the issues of misstating your financial statements, and you could possibly go to jail. That was their Sputnik moment. And looking up in the sky and seeing a satellite that could deliver a nuclear warhead, you've got to be saying, "Oh crap!" And so I have trouble equating the Target breach to a Sputnik moment. I would say no, but given the fact that over the last 2 weeks I've had two companies that would not otherwise or have never had a CISO before asking for help in placement of a CIO candidate. And basically beating the bushes to see if there are people around that could take the role and defining the role for the first time. Yeah, there are a lot more companies out there from my perspective that are taking notice and actually starting to do something about it.
So there's some additional evidence here, and there was a friend of ours sent us a Reuters article. It says exclusive U.S. companies seek cyber experts for top jobs and board seats. And basically, it says specifically, some of the largest U.S. companies are looking to hire cybersecurity experts in newly elevated positions and bring technologists onto their boards. A sign that corporate America is increasingly worried about hacking threats. List J.P. Morgan and Chase, Pepsi, Cardinal Health, Deere and Company, United, USAA, who I actually have for my insurance, are among the Fortune 500 companies seeking CISOs, which are going to be reporting with a direct line to the CEO and the board. And you know, and that is different. And I think that is potentially another leading indicator that we might be into a change. I mean, something we've talked about for as long as I've been in security. That you know that I still remember the debates when I started Gartner was, do you need a CISO or a CSO at all? Then it was, where should that person report? And ideally, it was always the CEO, but we knew a very small percentage of those, relatively, particularly in larger firms, reported to a CEO. You know, there's been kind of a 20-year sort of evolution. Now they're getting a seat at the table. Do you think that's just because of Target, or do you think that there's other reasons for that?
Cyber. Actually, I think there's three reasons for it. I think the cyber angle of it is because a lot of these companies are losing intellectual property to the APT cyber threat, and I think for a lot of those companies that were on the list, they are specific targets for that. I think on another angle of it is the breach. So a target like breach and losing face, losing reputation in the marketplace is a minor, albeit there, driver. And then there are other companies that just simply need to be able to communicate that story out. So the both to the board as well as outside the company. So that's more of like a risk-based approach. You know, so these are the risks that we face within our organization, and this is how we can deal with it effectively. So
Yeah, and one of the interesting things to me, you know, as well in this article is it's not just bringing the security in, and I agree. I mean, there's all these other motivations. There's another one we'll get to in a moment here, something else I saw today, but it's the fact that boards are actually looking for directors with technology experience. And I'll be honest, that's something that has stunned me uh, for quite a while. And because a lot of boards of these companies don't fundamentally understand technology, I think that was one of Target's issues based on understanding their makeup. And yet, that is the core to business today. I mean, you can't run a modern business, you cannot compete without technology underlying absolutely everything you do, from how you deliver your services to your customers, to how you run everything into the back end, to how you manage your supply chain, even if you're a traditional manufacturer. And you know, the fact that the boards, the people making the decision, still looked upon us as the geeks, and I don't mean to make it sound insulting like that, but it is. I mean, you could look at congressional testimony. You know, well, I'm no geek, I'm no nerd. Like, bullshit. That means you just can't compete and you can't function in today's economy if you say something along those lines. And so we're now seeing boards of directors, or you know, boards looking for technologists on their board of directors, which is pretty fascinating to me because that's an important clincher here.
how is it that they don't have board members without some technology background or experience in this day and age? Especially, I mean, what part of your daily business life are you not using some device that has electrons flowing through it to perform that business function? I mean, for the last decade or so, I mean, it permeates just about everything, and yet they're still fundamentally unaware of the technologies that run their business. So yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense for them to understand these systems and get people on the board that help them manage understanding and how the technology affects them.
You know, I think I wrote a. I'm trying to remember. I think I wrote it for Dark Reading back when we were still doing some writing for them. It was an article. It was like the stakes have changed, or table stakes, and in it the idea was we finally are getting our seat at the table, and this is I think becoming the ultimate expression of that. Today, walked into the coffee shop. Right there is the Wall Street Journal, and above the fold is an article on Chinese hackers. It was all about how Chinese hackers aren't just from the military, and just how extensive and how much they are sort of permeating and doing things like getting jobs at companies, and you know, using students, and just the vast, you know, extensiveness of their intelligence gathering operation. And for that to be in the Wall Street Journal above the fold. Edward Snowden's stuff, whatever you might say, a lot of that comes back to technology and information security and privacy. That was the big news on NBC this week. We have this Reuters report about the changes in board structures, CISOs. Some of these CISOs, it talks that the salaries are in the $500,000 to $700,000 range in the larger ones, with some of them receiving stocks and options to get them up there. I think one of them said it peaked out at about 2 million. It's hard not to see this as a big change, or at least the early indicators. Again, I just think I hope that this trend continues, and it's not one of these over response and then drop down spikes.
You just want to raise. That's what it is.
It was funny.
The numbers are outrageous, right? And so every single company is now looking to hire for that CISO position, and the salaries are going way up, and they can't find people. I mean, because you're not going to bring a pen tester off the street to come in and fill a CISO job. That's fundamentally the wrong type of skill set to do that. So where do you go look? Are you pulling out of your IT community? Are you pulling out of the dev community? So where do you get the skills to do that job? And yeah, go ahead.
No, I was nodding my head and agreeing.
Yeah, so I don't know when you fill these roles of where you go look, and I get asked the question, where is a reliable place so I can go source candidates for this? Well, there isn't one. Within our own group of friends, they come from all over. They've been in IT, or they have been developers, or they were security professionals who were doing network, scanning, and some of them were forensics experts. They come from all different walks, but they've got to have a breadth of understanding within the business systems, with how the application stack works, how the networking stack works, how these the entire business is structured. So it's this is going to be tough. We're going to see salaries climb quite a bit. Probably very incentive based, a lot of stock options and that sort of thing. But I would imagine that for the near term, we're going to see salaries spike because of the overwhelming demand for that type of candidate.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly hard. Recently, I was contacted by a company also looking for a CISO, and this was pretty big. It was a very high profile kind of position, and the set of qualifications they've been looking for nearly a year, before a lot of this started, and are having a very hard time finding somebody who can match. I think even among our network, or the people we know who are good at security, very few of them are capable at operating at that level. It's not because of the lack of technical knowledge, but there's the business sides of it. Even my wife, we were sitting there because she was out with me at the coffee shop. She goes, we were talking about this. She goes, "Is that the kind of job you'd want to take someday?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." I never say never, but that's a lifestyle change. I wouldn't think that personally I'm ready to commit to. I think I could probably do the job, or I do think I could do the job, because I have a massive freaking ego. But on the other hand, the level of commitment. I mean, you're not working at home. You're not working less than 8 to 12 hours a day. You're on call on weekends for when things go bad. You've got to go to board meetings. You've got to do all of the. I mean, that is a very heavy lifting job. And finding somebody with both the technical knowledge to make the right decisions and the business knowledge is very hard. And I think that we've seen actually a lot of CISOs that got into their positions with a lack of technical knowledge, and I'm going to be very interested to see if that, because I do think you absolutely need the business skills. I'm not underplaying those at all. I think that's just as important, absolutely equally as important. But I think we both know a lot of people who've moved into senior security positions that come more from kind of I don't want to say an audit assessment, but more of a paper pusher background instead of an operator background, and don't understand the technology to make the appropriate decisions. And I'm kind of wondering if that's sustainable as well.
No, no bueno, as Mike would say. No bueno.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah. If you've ever seen his day in the life of the CISO presentation, it's freaking brilliant. And to be able to handle half of that job, being able to understand policies and audit processes and legal and so forth is certainly going to be a big help. But if you don't understand the underlying technologies and how they work and how these systems are put together, you are not going to be much help in the long run. You're missing half of the picture. And so I wouldn't want to do the job just simply because we've got a great lifestyle business here, more so than anything else. Could I do it? Yeah. Would I have to tone down my approach to doing security? Yeah, absolutely. I think it changes the way you need to communicate and the way you need to operate.
And I'm going to close it out with this because we're running out of time here. But I was meeting recently, I don't know, about a month or two ago with a chief risk officer of one of these large organizations, and security fell underneath this person's purview, and they were almost proud of the fact that they weren't a technologist and that that wasn't their job, and they look at the bigger risk picture, and he, that yesterday I was on a call with one of the underlings, really one of the hands-on director level types. It was a call. It was about the basically use of a particular security technology, a really important thing for this particular company, and was struggling to get the business model lined up because it was all coming down to the economics and trying to come up with the proper economic argument to use internally when it was very clear that they needed this from a qualitative risk piece, but because they couldn't fully cost things out the way that anyway, it was just fascinating. There was this huge divide, and a security control is going to probably fall through the gaps in that particular organization because the people at the top aren't looking at the actual risk exposure at the technical level, and the potential financial consequences are massive if that particular risk happens. There's like this missing translation layer of being able to translate which are the necessary technologies, and that's something that organizationally we see a lot of people struggling with.
Not to plug the Phoenix Project again, but that was one of the core ideas behind it. Security controls falling through the technical gaps, but there are definitely ways for some of these things to be handled up in the business layer or in compensating controls and so forth. But in many cases, not. So it's dangerous.
Yep. All right. So with that, we're going to close this thing out. Thank everybody for joining us. Maybe Mike will be here next week, and maybe I won't. You never know. All right. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Adrian.